from my previous lecture on Sāṃkhya theory of perception, you must have got an idea that they had a well formulated theory of knowledge. So in continuation to that, in this lecture we will try to understand their take on inference or anuman and verbal testimony or shabda and the other stuff related to epistemology. If you remember from my previous lectures that Sāṃkhya philosophy aims at getting rid of the three kinds of suffering. And that is precisely how Ishwar Krishna begins the Sāṃkhya Karika. And in the first two verses he states that there are three possible ways in which one can get rid of suffering. Let us have a look at the second verse of the Sāṃkhya Karika, which is Drishtavat anushravikah saha hi avishuddhi shaya atishaya yuktah tat viparitah shreyan vyaktaha avyakta jna vijnanat. Now you need to understand the important words in this verse. Drishta means seen. Anu means follow, as in one after another. Shravika means the heard spiritual teachings, and here it refers to the Vedic injunctions for conducting rituals. Then there is this word avishuddhi. It means impurity. The word shaya means getting diminished or wearing away. Then atishaya, it means excess. The expression yukta means connected. Tat, of course, means that or this. Viparita means reversed or contrary. Shreyas means better state or better condition, which is auspicious. The word vyakta means manifest. Avyakta obviously means unmanifest. Jna means knowing. And vijnana means discriminative knowing or comprehending. Now, the first way to get rid of suffering is drishta, which includes the visible means or the practical methods of removing suffering. The second way to get rid of suffering is anushravika, which is the method that involves Vedic ritualism and sacrifices. But Ishwar Krishna says that both these methods, that is visible means as well as the method of following Shruti or revelation, they are useless. The visible methods are not absolute and final, and the method of following the Shruti is connected with impurity and excess of destruction. So, neither is good. The third way, which is tadaviparita, meaning the method contrary to both, is for the Sāṃkhya system superior to the first two. It is superior because it consists in the discriminative knowledge of the manifested, the unmanifested Prakriti and the Purusha. Now, why I am focusing so much on the expressions of this verse? It is because it seems that these three different methods of getting rid of suffering are analogous to the three basic cognitive faculties of men. And these faculties are seeing, which is drish, hearing, which is shru, and understanding, which is vijna. If one does a further research on this, then one would not hesitate in calling these by the name of pramanas that the Sāṃkhya system accepts. How is that? Notice, perception, rather direct sense perception, is drishta. Verbal testimony is, we all know, shruti. It indeed is revelation. Now what about anuman? The Sanskrit word anuman is derived from the word anu and the root ma. This root ma literally means to measure or to determine. But when it occurs with an upsarga or prefix, which in our case is anu, the meaning of this complete word anuman becomes interesting, as it means to determine after, which is quite similar to the meaning of the expression vijnana, which means discriminative knowing. Who knows, Sage Kapila wanted his system to be based on the method of anuman as opposed to the method of perception and Vedic injunctions. So that's a matter of research. Anyway, let us now dive into anuman. And for this we need to first understand the 5th verse of the Sāṃkhya Karika and extract from it the portion related to anuman. The 5th verse is Prati Vishaya Adhyavasayah Drishtam Trividham Anumanam Akyatam Tat Linga Lingi Purvakam Apta Shrutihi Apta Vachanam Tu. Here the portion that concerns us is Trividham Anumanam Akyatam Tat Linga Lingi Purvakam. It means inference is declared to be of 3 kinds, and it is preceded by a knowledge of the middle term linga and major term lingi. Now let us discuss this portion in detail. There are 3 kinds of anuman, although no name is given to these 3. But if you read the commentaries, you will know that they are called Purvavat, Sheshavat and Samanyato Drishta. And these are generally described with the help of examples rather than a clear-cut definition. So, going by the commentaries, we know that Purvavat literally means having the earlier or like before. Here, we infer the uniform concomitance between 2 things on the basis of past experience. For example, one can infer the existence of fire from the presence of smoke, because from past experience one knows that smoke is always accompanied by fire. Or one can infer rain on seeing thick dark clouds in the sky. So it is like, here is A. We saw before that A and B occur together. Now it will be like before, so there should be B, right? Now, Sheshavat literally means having the remainder or like the rest. It is that in which we draw an inference by eliminating all other possible alternatives. For example, when one infers that the whole number 2 is being referred to because one has ascertained that the number in question is neither equal to or greater than 3, nor it is equal to 1 or less than 1. Right? So, anyway, the 3rd kind of anuman is Samanyato Drishta. It literally means seen together or generally seen. So, there are certain examples like when Devdatta is seen at another place, it means he has been moving. So, when the planets are seen at a new place, they must also have been moving. Another example, there is light on the sky, they say, so the moon must have risen. One more, this mango tree is in bloom, so others must also be in bloom. Important thing to keep in mind is the relation between linga and lingi. If you remember, these terms appear in the 2nd part of verse 5, where it says anuman is preceded by a knowledge of the linga, which means a sign and which is a thing or a quality of a thing, and lingi, which means signified, which is also a thing or a quality of a thing. So what happens? On seeing the linga or sign, the lingi is inferred. Some commentators say that Purvavat and Sheshavat Anuman are causal in nature, as from the linga we infer the lingi. However, in the case of Samanyato Drishta, the linga and the lingi normally occur together. Although there are scanty references to Anuman in the Sāṃkhya Karika. If, however, we dive deep into the system, we will realize that it is hugely depending on Anuman. Sāṃkhya as a philosophy is fundamentally metaphysical. It does not try to reinterpret the world as we find it in everyday experience, but rather expands it with imperceptible but somehow fundamental entities. What is imperceptible, unknowable through the senses, drishta, could still be known either by reasoning or from tradition. According to Ishwar Krishna, inference has priority. Tradition is accepted as a pramana only when inference is silent. And this is clearly stated in the 6th verse of the Sāṃkhya Karika. Before going into the details, also notice the 6th verse of the Sāṃkhya Karika, which is Samanyataha tu drishtat atindriyanam pratitihi anumanat tasmat apicha asiddham paroksham apta agamat siddham. The portion from this verse that highlights this is Samanyataha tu drishtat atindriyanam pratitihi anumanat, which means knowledge of supersensible things is obtained through inference based on general observation. So, we can unhesitatingly say that the Sāṃkhya system proves the existence of the unmanifest Prakriti, the manifest world, and the Purusha with the help of these 3 kinds of Anuman. Now, the scholars of the Sāṃkhya system generally divide Anuman into 2 kinds, Vita and Avita. Vita kind of Anuman is based on universal affirmative proposition, whereas Avita Anuman is based on universal negative proposition. And the 3 types of Anuman I have just discussed fall in either of these 2 categories of Vita and Avita. Purvavat and Samanyatu Drishta are included under Vita Anuman, while Sheshavat is Avita Anuman. So this much about Anuman. Let us now move on to the 3rd and the last pramana considered by the Sāṃkhya system. It is Shabda or testimony. So let us go back to the 6th verse of the Sāṃkhya Karika. Samanyataha tu drishtat atindriyanam pratitihi anumanat tasmat apicha asiddham paroksham apta agamat siddham. Now I will concentrate on the portion that relates to Shabda, and it is tasmat apicha asiddham paroksham apta agamat siddham, which means knowledge not attainable even by that, meaning perception and inference, is attained through testimony or revelation. Shabda includes the teachings of the Vedas as well as testimony of those who enjoy similar kind of authority. They could be the infallible words of the sages. But the question is, what exactly is known through this pramana? The Sāṃkhya would say that the knowledge about extremely supersensible things like dharma, karma, and even the knowledge about afterlife could be achieved through Shabda pramana. However, we need to keep one thing in mind, and that is, according to the Sāṃkhya system, Vedas are not eternal. They are not composed by a single author. Rather, they are a collaborative effort of many great sages. The system also rejects the concept of God. So, there is also no question of God composing the Vedas. But we cannot outrightly say that Kapila, the founder of the Sāṃkhya system, completely rejected the Vedas. What we can possibly conjecture is that he showed little respect to them, and that is perhaps because he claimed reason or buddhi to be superior to the Vedas. So we are done with the three pramanas accepted by the Sāṃkhya system. Now I wish to discuss something very interesting about the validity and invalidity of knowledge. You see, knowledge depends on certain conditions for its origin. So the question is, how do we ascertain its truth or falsehood? How do we know whether it is valid or invalid? There are two possible answers to this problem. First is that the conditions that give rise to knowledge themselves ascertain the validity or invalidity of knowledge. And the second is that external factors or conditions are responsible for the validity or invalidity of knowledge. The first actually states that validity or invalidity of knowledge is svataha, that is self-evident. The second, however, states that neither validity nor invalidity is self-evident. It is rather evidenced by something external or parataha. But it seems these two answers are not exhaustive, as there are other alternative views also. So, the third alternative is that while the validity of knowledge is self-evident, meaning it is ascertained by intrinsic conditions, its invalidity is known by extrinsic conditions. And the fourth alternative is that while the invalidity is ascertained by intrinsic conditions, its validity requires evidence from external factors. So, these four possibilities are swatah pramanya, swatah apramanya, paratah pramanya, paratah apramanya. Swatah pramanya, paratah apramanya, and paratah pramanya, swatah apramanya. Now, the Sāṃkhya school upholds swatah pramanya, swatah apramanya, which means, according to them, validity and invalidity of knowledge is self-evident. All true knowledge is true by itself, and all false knowledge is false by itself. Of course, you analyze their theory and you will realize that swatah pramanyavad and swatah apramanyavad are quite consistent with their thesis. What do they actually say about knowledge? They say it is the reflection of Purusha in the buddhi which is modified into the form of the object. So, whatever the buddhi receives through the sense organs, that is experienced by the self. So, knowledge basically is a function of buddhi. If it is true, nothing external makes it true. Other pieces of knowledge can only confirm its truth. And if the knowledge that we have is false, nothing external can make it so. Another piece of knowledge can only reveal its falsity. Now, let's move ahead of validity and invalidity of knowledge and understand the reason of this false perception of water in a desert, or of snake in a rope, or of silver in a shell. These, of course, are cases of illusion. How does illusion happen? Now, what is the Sāṃkhya explanation for this? The Sāṃkhya theory of illusion is called Sad Asat Khyati. According to this theory, the object of illusion is both real and unreal. In other words, existent and non-existent. Now, water in the desert is both real as well as unreal. Snake in a rope is both real and unreal. Likewise, silver in a shell is both real and unreal. Let us understand why they say that. See, what is non-existent or unreal cannot be perceived. But in illusion, we do perceive the illusory object, isn't it? So, it is not non-existent. but it is also, or rather, it cannot also be existent, because what is existent or real cannot be contradicted later. Take any of these cases of illusion. What appears to be existent is later contradicted and proclaimed as unreal. So, according to the Sāṃkhya philosophers, illusory object is both real and unreal. The water, the snake, the silver exist somewhere, so they are real. But they do not exist at places just mentioned, the desert, the rope, and the shell. In that sense, they are unreal. So, that's about it. I will end my lecture here. Thank you so much for listening.